cemetery and seeing how things had been neglected over the years. Markers were tipped over, some were broke, some were buried. I complained about it on a page on the internet, and the alderman got wind of it, and he talked to me about it. And the city takes care of the property, but they couldn't take care of the markers. That's not theirs to take care of. A while later, it didn't take long, the alderman called me and said the position was open. If I want it, I can have it. So I gave it a try to see if I liked it. If I didn't, no big deal, I'm a volunteer, but I loved it. And I am pleased that I can make a difference. I recruited a lot of volunteers. I started a GoFundMe page, which is a big help. We got a nice little chunk in there that's going to help us straighten up some of the bigger monuments that are tipped over or leaning. We bought some, it's called MonuGrid, to put underneath some of the markers to hold them in place, straighten them out, get them leveled and visible again. So it's nice to have that money to be able to make some shots and calls in here to get things done.
Well, this probably started middle of last summer, and Lois had started chatting about it on, I believe it was nextdoor.com, and I said, I'd like to help. Can we get together? And we did, and it didn't really start rocking and rolling until late August, and still preliminary, working out details, and finally this year is when it really took off. And we just started putting, shovel to dirt, backhoe to lilac bushes, and got on with the job.
Back in the day, before this was all open, the cemetery was fenced in. So where the hearses, I guess they would be buggies at the time, would take this stretch all the way down to, from this tree down to that tree, and that would be a main road. And there's no one buried that we know of in these areas. There's a gate over there, the main gate. At one time, that's where they entered. So from that gate back would be the short alley. So the cemetery's divided into 4 quarters.
Because this is a historical cemetery, and the state in their divine wisdom needed someone to talk to here rather than giving instructions to nobody. So we needed to get a cemetery sexton, but sextons only go with a cemetery that's affiliated with a church. And so this would be a caretaker, but Lois chose to be a cemeterian for this cemetery. So she's been in contact with the state, and we got all the okay. We can do pretty much whatever we want here. We just can't disturb bodies, which we are. We're raising a lot of the gravestones and everything like that, but we haven't disturbed or reinterred anybody to that degree.
This border is called a grave curb, and this one was buried. We found it walking past it a few times, noticed what was going on, and we pulled it back out and got it situated. At one time, this must have been a thing throughout the cemetery. We have 5 like this. Actually 6, but one's so far down that we're not going to bother pulling it back up. This is a real hard one to pull up to the surface because the corners are bolted together, and it's very heavy, and it goes down, I think, 8 inches. I bought a bunch of flowers for that set of grave curbs over there, and these were leftovers. They didn't fit. So this is open dirt. It was easy to plant them. I stuck them in there. But now here we planted some grass. This curb was buried. I lifted that. That was pretty nice. This corner is exactly where I found it. I just lifted it up. It was heavy. I didn't want to break it any more than what it is. So this is where it was, and the rest I kind of pieced in there. And there was a lot of overgrowth here too. I pulled out a lot of peonies that are pretty when they're blooming, but then when they're done, it looks like a mess. I found a rose bush. There was one there too, so I tried to save those. I'm trying to get away from perennials only because they, over time, need more care. But those two, I grandfathered them in. This was overgrowth. That's why this is dented as far as it is, because there was a lot of flowers and plants we pulled out of there. Not to mention that as the caskets and things break down, the ground fills in and you get a low spot. This is one of my top priorities. But it's heavy. This is, I don't know how much that weighs, but it's not light. So they're gonna have to bring equipment in carefully. Somebody puts flowers on the Johnson grave over here. That one too, I would like to prop up and get that corner up, get this leveled too for them. But everything in time, it's a slow process. I was just walking through and saw this. It was buried. It was underground, and I pulled it out, washed it up a little bit. And then yesterday I put it on that slab. Hopefully we can keep it in place for a while. I found this one. I'm not quite sure what to do with this. I believe it says 1872. I can't find anyone that it belongs to. I don't know if that's a birth date or if that's a death date. I would assume it belongs to the Tinkhams. This is the Tinkham monument. I think I'm just gonna put it right back in where I got it from, just maybe bring it up a little higher. This is Catherine Gillis. Her marker was pretty much buried, so I raised that up. I can see the marks on the stone, the rust marks. I believe that's from the deck of a lawnmower, possibly. But when I went home and checked records, it said there was another stone. So I came back and I looked, and sure enough, I found this stone, but it was buried and hard to read. So we pulled it up. You can see this is about how much was visible. So we got it out of the ground, and one of the volunteers helped me clean it up and position it. And I'm afraid that the city might run that over too. So temporarily, I got these in there to just make them aware of changes. I do know that these hands, you see two hands clasped here. I went to a little class they had at one of the libraries on symbols on the markers. And they're saying when you see two hands on stones, you can't really make it out here. Only one hand is clasped, the other hand is not, and that's our maker bringing you back home. Jenny's got this really neat marker that we cleaned up and put up, but when we were cleaning it, it was laying in the dirt. On the back, there's this little poem. It's hard to make out. I did figure out as best I can. I don't have the information with me right now, but because it's such a nice little stone, I would like to get that put back on where it belongs. But it's a shame. She's just a little one. 79 to 80, it looks like she was maybe a year old. This lady over here, Mrs. Van Duzer, her stone was missing, but the city found it when we were cleaning out the overbrush. It was hidden in there, and they ended up accidentally breaking the corner off. It wasn't their fault because it didn't belong there, but she's listed as Widow Van Duzer. I tried to find her first name, and there's no first name. I found her husband, but he's only listed as Mr. Van Duzer. And her name is spelled 3 different ways in records, so if anyone's looking for her, hard to tell. But it's not positioned right. So we got it temporarily propped up, and one of the volunteers said if we can get some electricity out here, he would grind this out and try to get this up for me. The city's going to give us wheelbarrows and some shovels and rakes, and hopefully we can get some of these low areas filled in. So they're going to dump 5 yards of dirt over in that short alley. And then we got a volunteer group of 20 coming in.
Hi, I'm CEO of ConsortiX, a software company that's focused on helping hospitals comply with certain pharmaceutical regulations from the FDA. Today we have a project where we're volunteering to level low spots in a cemetery in the town of West Allis. Usually what happens is one employee picks an activity the whole company can participate in. Sometimes it's a fun activity like going out and watching a Brewer game. Sometimes it's giving back to the community, like what we're doing today at the cemetery. We've done all kinds of different projects, cleaning up parks, working Habitat for Humanity, working at the food pantry. Our financial controller found the opportunity online, and she followed up, and here we are. And it was a perfect day.
That was the one that originally got me started. When I walked through here and I thought we could maybe just get 4 guys, meet me at the cemetery, let's tip that back up. This one too looks like it's about ready to tip. You can see how it's heaving out of the ground. And if that tips forward, it's going to be that much more costly, I think, to stand it up, and it might take out those other 2 markers. I did find some of these. I wasn't sure what these were. These little markers with initials on them, and I find them in little places. You don't even see them sticking out of the ground. You just see a tip. So I dug a couple out, and it just didn't make sense to me because they just didn't seem to fit anywhere. So I talked to another cemeterian, and he said those are footstones. And they're at the foot end of a grave just to help mark the grave. About 8 feet from the original headstone, so I tried to count off about 8 feet from where the stone was at one time. I did turn them. I believe the initials should be facing the fence, but because you can't really see it, I thought I would turn them this way. A lot of history, a lot of history. Now this guy, Mr. Smith, he's a Civil War veteran. There's a few Civil War veterans. They say there's 8. I can only find 6. But I took that star home with me the other day, cleaned it up and redid it. That was all pitted, and those are the older ones. Those are made of metal. Now they're making them out of plastic. One day I would like to get some kind of a billboard of some sort where people can come in, and if they're looking for lot 55, they'll be able to look at this board and say, lot 55 is over in that quarter over there. I do a lot of Googling. I read a lot of the information they gave me. I try to keep up with things on Find a Grave. Things I don't know, I reach out to other cemeterians and they help me. Forest Home Cemetery has given me a few pointers. And if I don't know, I'll try to find out.